So what we're planning on doing in today's session is giving an introduction into the ServiceNow application portfolio management solution, highlight how you can utilize the capabilities to perform that application rationalization, really determine which application we should be investing in or de-investing in. Definitely an important time and juncture to take a look at our applications with all the external factors in the marketplace, both from a health perspective and an economic perspective. So thanks again, Jason, for co-hosting today. So typically what we see is when we look at application rationalization and looking at for ways to right size, typically one of the first questions that comes up is, what applications do we own today? And a lot of times in organizations, they don't understand which applications they own. So that's important to be able to get that visibility. And we typically can achieve that through top-down discovery and inventory, as well as bottom-up through automation. So that's really key to understand what you own today. Next is to really start to answer the question, what applications are required, especially as we have many organizations have been on the digital transformation journey. That has become a digital imperative based upon the pandemic and the requirement to work from home, the requirement to have telemedicine, other things. That digital transformation has now become an imperative. So we need to understand what applications are needed for our new strategies, our new business capabilities to support our new business models. And then how can we rationalize? How can we determine which applications we need to optimize, and what will be the costs associated with that, as well as start looking at some of the total cost of ownership of our applications. So the net is making sure that we can align our business strategy and capabilities with our applications to drive the desired business outcomes. And so that's the core focus here. And we're going to have a chance to kind of walk through the capabilities here. So in terms of a brief introduction into ServiceNow application portfolio management. So you've got 4 different portfolio elements here that are available. So there's the business portfolio, which is really reviewing the business capabilities, looking at the hierarchical map of your capabilities. You can start assessing those capabilities periodically, identifying where you have gaps. Based on those gaps, that might generate opportunities to invest in purchasing or building or sunsetting applications. So that's here in the business portfolio. Next, there's the information portfolio. So think of that as your different databases and data sources. So understanding the different types of databases you have in your organization and those information stores. It's a great opportunity to understand, do we have a lot of duplicate type of technologies being used, or do we have a lot of disparate technologies being used? So that's another way to look at rationalization. Next, we can look at the application portfolio, which is going to be a lot of our focus today. And really there we can go in and start analyzing our applications and understanding the workloads against those applications, understanding those applications by different attributes, tying it into our application framework, and be able to assess and understand total cost of ownership. And then we can also look at our technology portfolio. So there we can look at our hardware as well as our software assets. How do they relate to our applications? Which applications consume which software or technology assets? And what we see here at the bottom is the ServiceNow platform, and we see the CMDB and the service model, the data service model. So many of you that currently own ServiceNow, you already have access to the platform. You already have access to the CMDB. And as a part of that CMDB, you have various CI classes. And so the foundation component of app portfolio management is the CI class of business application. So you already have the inventory item, if you will, on the platform called business application. So what we're going to highlight is how you can leverage that foundation, which you already own, in these additional capabilities to assist you in some of that top-down strategic planning, as well as in some of your application rationalization activities. And so the power here is having that foundational component with the CMDB, assisting organizations to be able to both support strategic top-down planning with your applications, as well as the day-to-day operations and maintenance of your applications as you're delivering services and technologies to the enterprise. So this is very unique that you can have all of this on one particular solution and platform. Many organizations have different data sources, and so they got different solutions, and thereby we can reduce those integration needs by having everything on one platform. What's also nice here, and I kind of alluded to it briefly, is that when we start looking at application portfolio management, depending on our lens that we're coming to the table with, we'll identify how we want to use the information and what capabilities we need. So if I'm looking at it from a strategic leadership, enterprise architect, top-down view, we're using it for an overall strategic tool. We really want to understand and make sure that we can support all the business capabilities and drive the business outcomes for the organization, and that'll change over time. However, if we're coming at it from more of an operations perspective, an application owner perspective, we're using the power of the CMDB as an example. We're using the information collected and tracked in the application to support operations. And then the power here is if we can bring all that information together, we can then have a true total cost of ownership. We can start to certify and assess the applications so that strategically we can validate that the application's been assessed and updated on a periodic basis, and as well as on the operational side, we can make sure that we can track and report the amount of time it takes to maintain that application, i.e. driving to an overall total cost of ownership. So what I wanted to highlight next here is just some of the high-level capabilities here in the presentation, and then we'll have a chance to walk through that in the demonstration as well. So as I mentioned before, if you currently own ServiceNow, you currently own the platform, you would own CMDB today, and you'd have the opportunity to use the business application CI class, and that's the foundational component here. So with that, right, you'll have a chance to inventory your applications, be able to have various attributes that might relate to your application framework, and then you might be able to show some of the relationships, as you can see here, just by using the existing capabilities with the CMDB. But there's additional capabilities that are needed as you start looking at application rationalization. So how do we calculate and determine the total cost of ownership? How do we start looking at the associated volume of work that these applications are supporting or not supporting? How do we start assessing and scoring our applications periodically with surveys, with assessments, with automated indicator updates such as total cost of ownership? So how do we do that? How do we maintain that inventory so we can really start to look at by different groupings of our application, understanding which applications we need to sunset, which one will be candidates to continue to invest in or to replace. So application rationalization provides us with a lot of out-of-the-box indicators. Some of those are surveys, some of those are actual indicators, some of those are actually calculating costs based upon just what you're doing today in terms of managing incidents to support various applications. Next, and this is maybe not next, but more from a top-down strategic perspective, you want to start looking at your business capabilities. So here you want to start understanding all the capabilities in the organization. You can start mapping those to processes, map those to various applications. Then you can perform various assessments and surveys against those capabilities, understand where you might have gaps, understand where the risks are. At the same time, you can understand the level of investment you're currently making based on proposed projects as well as active projects. Then we can also look at it from a technology portfolio perspective. And so what's key here is we can either look at it from the lens of an application and see the underlying software assets of the underlying technology assets. We can also look at those assets and understand when they may be coming end of life. So we can get that visibility into when we might need to do an upgrade or might need to re-platform the various applications. That's a nice indicator of when we need to start investing or de-investing in those applications. Application roadmap. So once we've determined how we're going to invest and optimize our applications, we need to be able to easily track proposed initiatives as well as in-flight initiatives related to those applications. What we're seeing here is seeing a roadmap of projects and demands. So because App Portfolio Management is part of the IT Business Management Suite, it's fully integrated in with the Project Portfolio Management System. And so you'll be able to view a roadmap of your proposed projects to address those gaps and capabilities or to address those upgrades or re-platforming initiatives that you need. So you'll be able to view the overall roadmap. Then there's many indicators that are set up and automated in the system. You can obviously add additional indicators, but you get a large set of indicators available to you as part of the App Portfolio Management solution. So I can now view and track total cost of ownership and see that trend over time. And I can see, in this case, looking at some of the top consumers associated with the various applications and some of the forecasted costs or changes related to the trend. So it starts to give you that full visibility into your application costs. And the power here is being able to have these indicators. These indicators can run on a periodic basis in an automated fashion and really address one of the biggest challenges for app portfolio management is maintaining that portfolio and inventory, making sure it's up to date, making sure it's being assessed, reassessed, and certified. And so you've got the ability to do that and have that automated here within the platform. Here's some highlighting some additional indicators. We mentioned there's multiple indicators you can start assessing your applications out of the box. As I mentioned, some of those would be a survey, such as your customer satisfaction. Other those would be just an automated function on the platform. So you could look at the number of incidents. You could associate that with the cost of your incidents. So a lot of power here in being able to have these indicators, giving you the ability to start assessing application versus other applications. In terms of the licensing here for App Portfolio Management, just to kind of give you an idea, it's part of the IT Business Management product line, and it's now licensed here as a separate SKU for Application Portfolio Management. As you can see here, the demand project management capabilities are all within the same product line, and you'll notice here when we do the demonstration, a tight integration between the different capabilities. Since we're assessing our applications, we're going to need to identify where we need to invest. We can automatically create a demand, create a project, and then manage that application roadmap. So at this point, I'm going to move into the demonstration. And so what we're now looking at here is similar to what I showed in the system. And so this is kind of the home page of managing the different types of work. I can see here that I've kind of got an overall cockpit here to kind of look at notifications. So I'm seeing these notifications as we're running some of those assessments, running some of those certifications, seeing if we have any orphan business capabilities. We have various gaps so that we make sure that we get those addressed so that we're capturing all the data and we can certify the applications. We can see here various recent activity that's going on. And so this is where we can get visibility into the activities and capabilities with APM. So if I wanted to come over here and just show you some of the out-of-the-box views here. So we have the APM landscape. So a lot of dealing with your portfolio is really kind of slicing and dicing the data, having various dashboards associated with the data. So here's the application landscape, which is out of the box. I could slice and dice that based on category, install type, as an example. So I've got my top 10 applications by user base. Got applications here by install type. We've got really a couple of heat maps here by category and manufacturer, as I can start to also look into some of the aging of our different applications as well. So I can then come in and look at the analysis dashboard. So this comes out of the box as well. So the analysis dashboard is really starting to assess, and it ties in with some of the project portfolio management capabilities. So we can look at the number of demands as well as the number of projects by capability. We can see that kind of mix here. So we're looking at these different business capabilities that Jason was asking about. So we can see those here in the system. And then last but not least, kind of looking at it from an enterprise architect dashboard perspective and a series of dashboards. So we can start looking at identifying, do we have some rationalization opportunities, a number of applications that might not be in the cloud yet. Maybe that's a key indicator. We might have low customer satisfaction with various items. We can look at our capability gaps. So we really help to understand what's going on across your portfolio. We can start looking at the spend here by the different business units as an example. So a lot of power here in terms of being able to view the data that's here in the system. We can actually look at the pipeline here. So as we're developing those demands and requests to enhance our application portfolio, do some of that rationalization, we can track these here and have the business cases created, manage those through the process here, and get those then approved so we can start decommissioning or adding in additional applications. We can also then kind of look at a go-live calendar so you can kind of get a bird's eye view of what's coming forward in terms of your applications. So what I want to do next is I'll go back to the home page here, and we'll take a quick look here at the business capabilities. So looking here at the business capabilities, we can see the business capabilities. So these are taken from that process library that's available. And I can see the different capabilities here. I could obviously change and update those. I can look at the different areas and break that down into the sub areas as well. So I can see those. I can start looking in here. Let's see if we wanted to go look at a particular area. I can start looking at the capabilities. Over here, it's going to start showing and letting me know, are we investing in this particular capability? What's our current scoring? Do we have any risks and assessments associated with that? I could then toggle over here and look at the actual applications. So Fastman here, we could look at various business services that we have mapped to the capabilities. You'll see here that you typically want to start assessing your capabilities on a fiscal year basis. We can also look at things from a technology, a risk perspective, and be able to manage it from a risk perspective. So we can come in here and look at other different capabilities, see what other type of assessment results we have here in the capability mapping. So that's what we can do here in the capability mapping. You'll notice here if we start to see some gaps, we can actually come in here and create that demand. So that would initiate the process to create a business case to get another project funded. Maybe we want to create a goal, create a program to go off and do digital transformation. So it's nicely tied into the PPM capabilities. So I can next come in here and look at things from an overall analyze perspective and really start looking at some of the rationalization that we want to look at for applications. So here we can start looking at the assessment period, and we can start to see some of the, this is just the general categories, that as we move across here, we start to see some of the different indicators that we can capture. So you can see down here, we've got some of the indicator scores out of the box, TCO, incident counts. We can look at the business value, the customer service scores, facilities cost, hardware cost in here. So you have a lot of different out of the box indicators you can start assessing your applications against. I can now come in here and say if I wanted to look at human capital category. So it's now going to show the information here associated with this particular category. I can then see that I got various applications, and I can see the associated metrics associated with those applications. I'm going to go in and select a specific application. So this application here is really within the CMDB, as I mentioned before. So this is a CI class of a business application. And what we're seeing here is out-of-the-box data elements. This is something we typically do as part of implementation, is add additional attributes to fit your overall application framework. But we can see here that we have some of the core attributes set up here. We can also see the related items. So those of you that are currently managing the CMDB, we could click in here and see the chart that we looked at earlier. You'll notice here that we have some additional capabilities here. And so this starts to give us some of the capabilities here for rationalizing the application and managing the application. So if I wanted to come over here and start looking at total cost of ownership, it's really a dashboard here with all the different indicators, so you can really start to understand the trend and cost of the application. Here again, I could toggle over and look at other applications here and see what the associated costs are. So I can kind of view the overall trend. I can see some of the top consumers and users of the different applications. I can look at it from a shared services perspective. So I can really start to understand TCO. And what's nice here, it's all in one solution, right? So I can manage that here as I'm looking at my application TCO. I could come over here and look at the application roadmap. And so this is going to be pulling in the demands and projects that are coming in. I can also look at this here by business capability. So we can see how we got those business capabilities from the hierarchical map, but I can relate those to all of our different demands and projects and be able to do some assessment. So I can see here under managing retirement capabilities, we can see we have this initiative here around employee workbook. We have managing the IT portfolio. We have enhancements to the attendance management system and managing human capital. We have employee agreements in the HR service portal, and I can see the associated costs. What's nice here is I can actually drag and drop and do some pivot table analysis here as I'm looking at the overall roadmap. So here I'm looking at business capabilities, and then I'm doing it by business unit, so I can understand where we're investing by business unit. I could actually change that and just look at it from a business unit perspective and say for this application, we're planning on spending $900K for HR and $99K here for finance. We could also look at it from an overall timeline perspective and start to getting a visualization here of what's working. So the blue here is all the projects that are in flight, so we can get access and visibility into those projects. Here we can look at the proposed projects, the demands that haven't been approved yet. We can see that information highlighted here. So a lot of power in being able to quickly have that roadmap here at your disposal as you are looking at really starting to get the results from these projects. So next we would come over and let me just go back here into the application. Actually, I don't want to go that route. So I'll go over here and look at my business applications. So we're here into the attendance application. So we've had a chance to kind of look at the roadmap. We've looked at the TCO. We could come over here and look at the application 360 view and look at some of those indicators and the overall score that we were showing before. So we can see the overall scores. We can see the trending of those scores. So we might need to, plan another survey, or we'll need to look at if we're doing it on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, whatever frequency you'd like, you can run and automate, and it'll recalculate these indicators. So you just really start to understand information related to your application. In this demo data here, I don't really have much cost information rolling up here, but I could start to look at detailed information here in terms of CapEx, OpEx, and expenses. Here, this is where I'd see roll up of incidents. I don't have the data for here in this particular example. and come in here and let's look at another and see if we have data associated with that application in the demo environment. Doesn't look like I do, but that's how the information would flow here, be able to get that visibility. So this is really another dashboard, but I can tie it to my application. I've got these various performance analytics indicators to track and manage application indicators from a 360 perspective. So I can manage that. Then the other area that we wanted to highlight here is looking at it from a technology lifecycle perspective. So this is where we can start looking at our software assets, to start looking at our technology assets related to our business application, understand the risk, understand the end of life, if you will, of the different applications. We can also then see in here the different demands that have been submitted and the associated timeline. So a nice consolidated view here, the power of kind of bringing in information with the project portfolio management system. When we see we have a gap, we can come over here and create that demand, create that project to address the gap. We can see here from the legend that we'll be able to kind of look at the pre-release upgrade, general availability, end of life, extended support, end of support. So we can kind of see that information here as we are managing the supporting technologies. So what we're doing over here is we're looking at things from a business application perspective. We're seeing our different business applications here within each business application. We break that down into your service, then break it down into your software and technology models, so you can see all the associated underlying technologies supporting that application. So that's what we're seeing here in this particular view. We can also then sort it here by looking at high risk, moderate risk, or show all risks here associated with the applications. Next here, if we wanted to, we could look at it from the technology or the software side of things. So we now see the software. Within that software, we're going to see the different applications. So a couple of different ways here of slicing the information and understanding what's going on with that and the associated applications. Or we can look at it more from a classification perspective. So if we're looking at access software as an example, CRM, so the different categories of classification that you might have. So then we can come in and look at the different software models or applications supporting these particular items. So we can see here we got our software models based upon that classification. So gives you a lot of different ways of viewing the data. So we can start to view our applications. Understanding this is really the power here is understanding when those are end of life, giving you that visibility, and then being able to initiate the actual demand or project. So then if we come back here and look at the home here for the different capabilities. So we just walked through at a high level the technology portfolio, starting to assess those applications, understanding when this underlying technologies go end of life or end of support. We went in here and looked at the analyze, do our rationalization of applications, looking at the TCO, the landscape. Those are the various dashboards we looked at before. This is new, is putting together the information portfolio. So just the base listing of our different objects. We have our hierarchical map. We can come from business planning perspective. So we can come in and manage the creation of your different strategies, the goals that you have in the organization. This is where we can manage those capabilities that we had before. I could come in and create those manually or have those imported in. And then we could go over here and look at the actual map itself. So I'm going to pause there and see if we have any questions, but that's a high-level introduction and overview here for the application portfolio management solution.
No, it looks really good. I think I'm pretty much sounding the same question that was posed earlier. So in order for anyone to sort of wrap their heads around capability maps and those kinds of things, for the most part, you're leveraging, did I hear you say that you're leveraging the APQC?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
And did they hear a second choice? Because I think I wasn't familiar with any other one besides the APQC standards, which again, for different industries, some things work and snap on pretty well. For others, you kind of have to jerry rig a little bit what the capabilities need to look like.
Yeah, so it's just really a simple Excel import, right? So if you have a different framework, if you wanted to use the IT for IT, that framework, you could use that and import that in. Or if you want to go to Techopedia and use what they have. So it's really just a simple way to load those in, and you can start there with your map. So, but yeah, very good question. Yes.
We have another question from an attendee, which is, are you also able to associate hardware lifecycle to an application as well as software lifecycle?
Yes, you can. So that just came out in the Orlando release. This environment is in Orlando, so that's available in Orlando. That's why you didn't see it here today. But I mentioned it in my talk discussion there, but it is available in the Orlando release. Good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also had another question that might be top of mind for some of the folks on the line. I heard you mention several times on how the health of the CMDB is kind of critical in helping build the value around the APM. But what have we seen about those folks that maybe don't have that mature of a CMDB? Are there best practices for quick starting this application portfolio management system and using that as a catalyst to build the strength of the CMDB, or kind of what best practice do you have to share in that regard?
Yeah, very good question, Jason. So from that perspective, right, and the implementation here, we typically have two approaches. You have a top-down approach as well as the bottom-up approach. So from a top-down approach, it's more strategically focused, and typically many organizations already have an existing inventory. Maybe they have it in Excel, maybe they have it in SharePoint, but they have an existing inventory. So you can take that inventory and then you can import that in very easily into the CMDB with a CI class business application, and you can load that in. And then as the CMDB starts to mature over time and you use it for operations and other things, they can use it. But by doing that top down, bringing that inventory in, which you can do even though you might not be fully using the CMDB, and that way you'll have your foundation, and then you can start using these additional capabilities on top of that. So very good question, Jason.
Thank you.
Jon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Yeah, my audio was off. I just had to dial back in. I had a real quick question. When I'm looking at the tool here, are the software names constructed by APM? In other words, I see like you've got the name of the software, you've got the version, and some other information, or do you have to sort of manually construct those? The tool we're using right now, it's a little difficult because in order to kind of cover multiple versions, because maybe I'm doing an upgrade, I've got to create those separately, but they're not really associated. So does the APM module do a better job in terms of kind of, I can actually deal with a life cycle where I can maybe create a new object as far as a version number, but it's associating back to the same application, so I can kind of go end-to-end life cycle with that?
A couple different approaches there. So say if you're using the platform for software asset management, you're using it for hardware asset management, and you're using those inputs coming in that you might already have from other inventory, or you're using those inputs from discovery. So it's identifying those items, it's putting those records in the system. And so from that perspective, you wouldn't need to create those manually. You wouldn't have to come up with a name yourself. Discovery would be able to assist in doing that, or service mapping, depending upon how granular you're looking to get. So if you're using those type of tools, then that information would be in the system, and then you would just relate those to your application. So that's one way of doing it. And then kind of the poor man's way would be going in and entering those software items manually. And then the third way is kind of taking that list of software packages, if you will, going from Techopedia and loading those in into those software hardware assets in the platform. So those are the three common areas. Obviously, discovery would be option number one. And then obviously you could load in from Techipedia, or you could do those in manually. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, it's Jason again. I know some of the conversations we've had with some of the attendees on the phone are very interested in different dashboard views, and I think you did a great job of showing some of the out of the box dashboard capabilities. But could you take a moment and describe how easy it is to configure those dashboards? I mean, we're looking at one for ITBM L1 Enterprise Architect dashboard, but what if I wanted my own configuration of different views, and how would I go about that?
Yeah, it's very easy. And so we just got a couple minutes, but I could actually create some for us here on the fly and show you how easy that is. So I could come over here, say I wanted to create my own dashboard page. So we come over here, and first I would just create a dashboard. Here we come in and say new. And we can say John's dashboard. And I can now submit that. So I've now created a dashboard. At this point in time, the dashboard is blank. So I could come over here first and look at some reports. I could come over here and look at all previous reports. So I might be able to see some out-of-the-box reports here. I could search for by application in here. And so I might see some apps impacted by in-flight projects. So I might see some of those that were previously on one of those other dashboard pages. I could come in and I could add those other reports that are out of the box. I could add those here to my dashboard. So I could go through that process, add those items. Also then, I can come back here and I can go over here and look at my list of business applications. So it's really nice here. This is kind of the foundational layer of doing reporting, but from here, I could come in here and say, maybe we want to look at things. Let's just take, since I have it here, let's just look at the business process. So we could right click here and say, let's now create a bar chart or a pie chart. So at this point, I can take this list of applications and I can create a report there with one click. So I've now got a report. It will look just like this. I could come back over here to the data. We can see it already identified the table to pull the information from. I can come over here and put the name of this. So I could say applications by business process. So I could do that. I could come back over and say, you know, maybe I didn't want a bar chart. Maybe I wanted a pie chart. Maybe I wanted a list view. So I can select the different types of options. And then at this point, I could actually publish it here. So I could run this and I can see, okay, that's what it's going to look like on my dashboard page. That looks good. But I could come in here and do other filtering. So I could say, okay, I want to make sure the applications are active. Maybe I wanted to pull in, but I just wanted to look at the application owner. So I could come in here and say, oh, is that me? So I could select that as me as an example. Then I could do a run on this. Probably don't have any, or actually I do. I have some here, such as me. So we'll keep that. So at this point, I can now save that. So now I can go back to my dashboard page. So I come back here to John's dashboard. We can see we had a report here. So now we come in and click on reports. I can see applications by business process area. At that point, I can come over here, and now I can add that here to my dashboard. So I can easily create a dashboard and reports just like that. So pretty simple. So it is very powerful here. We typically get a lot of really good feedback, Jason, from customers as they see the ease of going in and creating reports and how those are kind of pre-developed. And then I can tweak and add additional filtering or additional capabilities. Great question, Jason. Thank you. Does that help?
Very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
So in terms of the next steps here, more than willing to have discovery calls with customers that are interested to understand a little bit more about the solution. We could provide more information about pricing. We could have a discovery call to understand your use cases and kind of, as a result of that discussion, come back and provide you with a proposal, what it would look like to purchase as well as implement the solution. So a lot of different options we can do in terms of the next step off of today's call based upon your interest. So Jason, I'll also turn that over to you and see if there's anything else you wanted to offer as a next step.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce, Jon has been an excellent partner to work with for our local customer base. In fact, I mean, his company basically specializes in the ITBM and ITSM spaces within ServiceNow, and have been doing so for the last 20 years. And he's been very generous with his team's time, even offering to do kind of 2-hour discovery workshops at no cost with some of the customers. So some of these situations where you don't have the muscle currently, it's like, well, where do we start? What are some best practices? We don't want to step in any potholes or whatnot. And so if that's kind of what your mindset is right now, please reach out to myself or Jon, and we can see if we can't set up a no-cost workshop to help your team think through some of the parameters around application portfolio management, and how do we get started? Where do we start? What kind of lift is it? What kind of cost is going to be associated with it? Those are all very common questions and stuff that Jon's been very knowledgeable and very helpful in helping people figure out.
Well, we appreciate you guys joining today. We look forward to following up with you after the call. And thanks so much for your time, and hope you got some great insights here on how you can operationalize as well as rationalize your applications. So thanks again for your time today.